welcome. We have a special show for you. It's November 29th, but we're, in the holidays mood and celebrating the holidays coming up. You'll see poinsettia here, and we also have an interesting take on 20th century Russian poetry. We're happy to share that with you. I'm Frank Crowley, and my co-host Gemma Matthewson is here with me as usual. And together we seem to work intuitively about what really we want to share with you. And it's such a joy. Each show gets so really much more enthusiasm, it seems. A fellow, Walter, walked into the coffee shop on the corner this morning and said, "Oh, we keep flipping channels, but boy, do we love to stop on channel 19
Yay.
and see what's happening and who the guests are." So I'm really happy to have Gemma here today.
And I'm very happy that I have been continued to be invited, Frank. Thank you very much.
And what a sharing we have. Usually we have a third or a fourth person as a special guest, but today we're your special guests.
And I am really the student today because you are the authority on the Russian poetry.
Thank you. I spent the month thinking about Christmas, family, and also the seasons changing. And even though it's been up and down with cold and warm, rain, a little snow, the feelings there, the moods there in the trees. I think I feel the elegiac feelings that Corsi wrote about. We had his book a little while ago. So today's theme is moving on, the passing of generations, and the celebrations of those lives that have gone on. And the 20th century's over, and 1917 came and went with the Russian Revolution, hammer and sickle behind me. And now it's a brave new world. So let's get started with a little.
I think that theme of Brave New World and dystopias will come up again a few times during this.
Won't it, though?
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how utopias morph into dystopias.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for pointing that out. We're up to our ankles in it, aren't we?
We sure are.
Yeah. So I want to read a little passage from Unitarian Universalist from St. Paul, Minnesota. Got me thinking about parents who've passed on. And it's part of their Sunday get-together. When we think of our mothers and fathers, their eyes starting to dim and see from a greater distance, we must surely know that they have lived much, suffered much, and traveled the soul's journey in grace and hardship. There are always the two sides, but then the third possibility, the transformative experience, where we let go of all previous thoughts, concepts, pains, I added worries, conditionings, attractions and aversions, to accept what is given in this moment. This would be to somehow reconnect and make whole. Isn't that wonderful? How to, from chaos, wholeness, meaning. I guess that's the human enterprise anyway.
Yeah, it's very good.
I'd love to hear you read Mary.
Okay. This is Mary Oliver. White owl flies into and out of the field. Coming down out of the freezing sky with its depths of light, like an angel or a Buddha with wings. It was beautiful and accurate, striking the snow and whatever was there with a force that left the imprint of the tips of its wings 5 feet apart, and the grabbing thrust of its feet, and the indentation of what had been running through the white valleys of the snow, and then it rose gracefully and flew back to the frozen marshes to lurk there like a little lighthouse in the blue shadows. So I thought, maybe death isn't darkness after all, but so much light wrapping itself around us, as soft as feathers, that we are instantly weary of looking and shut our eyes, not without amazement, and let ourselves be carried as through the translucence of mica to the river that is without the least dapple or shadow, that is nothing but light, scalding aortal light, in which we are washed and washed out of our bones.
Wow.
That's a very, I don't know, it's not so much a romantic picture of death as a alternate understanding of the next step in, a kind of spiritual existence.
I love it for that. An alternate read of the end of life and death, which follows on that little passage from the UU. Our parents pass on. We're here. The year ends, and yet we're bathed in light, welcoming the new. What imagery! That white snowy owl is a little lighthouse. How I love that image, which only she somehow, in her signature way, can name. Death is a snowy owl. And yet, the light, she takes that really and runs with it in a beautiful new alternative direction. I could read her over and over and over and somehow never tire. How do they do that?
I don't know. When I let you know, I'll write a poem.
And help me out.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's definitely a teaching, learning. You teach, I learn. That's nice. It's so mutual. And we have a friend who's with us in a way today because we're reading his words. You knew Richard Tejan as a really dear friend.
That's correct.
And I was so impressed even 9-10 years ago when I heard him read. Loved hearing him. A Guilford native, parents in Guilford. The Tejan name was up on the sign for accounting, I think.
Well, actually, his parents lived in Old Saybrook.
Did they?
Wow.
And
before that, they lived in Amherst. And I'm not sure, where his parents came from before that, but they lived in Amherst, South Amherst, for quite a long time. Then they moved to Old Saybrook. But Richard had lived in Guilford for quite a while.
Yes.
Right.
And he was on the poetry circuit.
That's correct, and he was a member of the Guilford Poets Guild. And
was he?
And I met him at a workshop. A different, not the Guilford Poets Guild, but a different workshop in Guilford. He was very careful with words and very careful with poetry, and it really did mean a lot to him because he equated poetry with thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
With shaping his own understanding of the world. At least, in my opinion, that's
works.
What he did.
So
and I remember
beautifully,
but I qualify that because I remember that when he passed in 2009, it was interesting to me that so many people had so many different impressions of who he was as a person. And it took me a long time to absorb that, and how I figured it out was that, at least I think, he not in a dishonest way, but in a helpful way, he really became who he thought that other person,
yes.
needed to be in the moment of their existence and the conversation.
true characteristic of a good poet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he
The
wasn't
meeting.
right. He certainly never gave up his opinions or his
Yeah.
his sensibility, but he just had that. He was many things to different people. And,
Yeah.
he was what people needed because he was so well liked and so valued. People valued his opinions and his insights.
I love that deeper understanding of him because I didn't know him as well as you did. I'd admired him as he was at the podium or he was on his bicycle.
His recumbent.
He was incumbent bicycle through town, just with the head erect and up, in the command of the world attitude.
Oh yeah, right. He did have an attitude.
Yes, so much.
Yeah. And he could be very insightful about, what was going on in the world.
And with strong opinions.
Right,
yes,
right,
I
right.
second that. And the other is that line from his wonderful poem about walking along the beach. And the reason we're talking about Richard today is, again, perfect synchronicity. The love of the universe saying, wait a minute, that's Richard's image. As I walked him and asked it, the sea foam skittering across the sand. Now, who would have said that?
Right.
But a good poet, and
And
Richard and his visions.
And many of his poems, for people who want to look them up, many of his poems did have to do with the kind of poem where you're experiencing nature and it brings you to a realization. And
Yes.
but he did it in such a unique, with his own unique insights that I would encourage.
Only Richard.
Yeah, that only Richard would come to. So.
Thanks, because I'm getting a better view of him at a beneath the skin, Let's hear a few that you love. I brought the book too from the Westbrook Library.
Okay.
Did you take part in getting this collection, or was it just some friends and editors? Or?
No, this was his own.
His own?
His own, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at times I was, I workshopped with him, so and only in that slight way would I take part. I remember once he told me that I shouldn't use the word reticulated because it certainly wasn't a good way to describe a python. And I said, well, Richard, I didn't make that up.
And that's the essence of Richard.
Right.
The perfect word
Right.
for the perfect place.
Right, le sumo juste.
Yeah, and that's his signature.
Yeah.
His grand command of diction.
And I mean, his criticism of my poems were usually, do you really need all these words? So he was definitely a minimalist. I'm just going to read one.
Or two.
Or two. So first I'll read one that I chose, and then I'll read the one that you asked me to read. Picturing Jarvis Creek. I am disappointed this camera can't transmit my full awareness of the open sluice here, the smell, sound, and temperature, the mildly intoxicating vapor that comes up where the creek clashes against the tide coming in. How can I photograph all this? I'd need a camera that could mix streams of sense and dice them small enough to blur the joins and gaps. And for that, I'd need electronic sensors that haven't been invented and digital converters. And how to play it back, a plug behind the ear or a shot of distilled brain chemicals. Meanwhile, my partner in art leans against my back, chats happily with the watercolor emerging under her hand. As she works, the tide rises, the creek quiets, light changes, and the paint dries.
Oh.
Do Do you have one you'd like to read?
No, but I brought a copy of World Without Me
Okay.
just to follow along.
All right. And World Without Me. So Richard had a disease called non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And by the time I met him, he was, he had it for 5 years, and he originally had a shorter prognosis.
Oh.
But with new drugs always being invented, they found ways to further it off and further it off. But the kind he had, there is a kind of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. One is large cell, one is small cell. His could not be cured. So he knew he had a short time, but he had actually lived longer by several years than he had first expected to when he got the prognosis.
I picked that up in a couple of poems.
So this is called The World Without Me. Picture the world without me, easy for you, but I can't. So I tell a story that continues after my death, a tale with no teller. Here gathered are the people of my world, mostly women, since sex seems to have been my chief obsession, frankly. They wear wasp-waisted black suits, black stockings, and sharp black heels. Even the coffee girl comes, whose name I still don't know. They pace like cats. It's the first time any of them have met. After my funeral and the publication of a chapbook of posthumous poems, I feel free to contemplate the changes in years to come. In widening circles, I see silent refrigerators in houses with peeling paint, mini-marts with empty pumps, roads broken by weeds and ice, ignorant and fearful hordes that wander the world driven by drought, flood, and endless war. When a teenager, I read apocalyptic sci-fi about heroes and their bands of survivors with mutant powers sometimes that roam the wreckage, got rescued by scientists from New Zealand, or went back to a healthy sustenance economy. Usually a woman helped regenerate the species and provided me a thrill. By implications, both the panoptic author and I knew the big picture. That seems fantasy now. There will be no such stories for the world with no I at its center.
Wow.
So that's another one that he had quite a few poems about mortality.
Yes.
So
on his mind.
On his mind. So 3 years after he passed away,
my goodness.
I wrote this poem.
He was on your mind.
And you'll see why. This is called Toward Frost. Let me not begrudge the cold blade the wind scrapes over corn stalks, nor the hills surrendered crimson to rust and shrouding mist. Mute skin cases hold fast, abandoned by timbling cicadas, whose whetstone rasp is replaced by susurrus of anxious ground foragers. At the used book sale last week, I bought a paperback on a whim and tucked it in the bedside stack. Tonight, I reached for it to find his name scrawled inside. Why does he still send me gifts? I hear again the exhaled breath of his final words gyre down like leaves released.
Oh my.
It's a race to the finish, a race to the finish.
Oh, you're giving me goosebumps, which I don't often get in the show or reading poems. That's brilliant.
Well, not as brilliant as his poems, but he gave me that last opportunity. I had to think that.
Oh my!
I often shop at that Guilford, the book fair that they have a couple times a year, and I was sort of going through this book for this person, this book for another person. That was the only one I thought, well, I like T.C. Boyle's work. I'll get this short fiction for me, and that was what it was. It was his book that he had owned.
Richard Dejan. Oh, that's such a beautiful happening. again, you know, just
right.
popped in your lap. It's such a moving poem. Would you mind reading that again? Your imagery is like,
Oh, okay.
your imagery is as rich as Richard's.
Oh.
Somehow, I'm almost
Well.
hearing him between your lines.
Anything I can do, you know.
Really?
A lot of it was because he told me to have those fewer words.
Less words, more
Less words.
pungent.
Toward frost.
Oh,
Let me not begrudge the cold blade the wind scrapes over corn stalks, nor the hills surrendered crimson to rust and shrouding mist. Mute skin cases hold fast, abandoned by timbling cicadas, whose whetstone rasp is replaced by susurrus of anxious ground foragers. At the used book sale last week, I bought a paperback on a whim and tucked it in the bedside stack. Tonight I reached for it to find his name scrawled inside. Why does he still send me gifts? I hear again the exhaled breath of his final words gyre down like leaves released. It's a race to the finish, a race to the finish.
that's the most musical poem I've ever heard of your own.
Oh,
Oh, Whetstone. It brings back the wasp-waisted
right,
black,
right.
you know, suit. I mean, there's so many sibilants in your poem there. I could almost hear the wind, which you bring at the beginning. The craftsmanship is wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. You did him justice.
Well, I think this book actually is available in the Guilford Library.
And this one is available in the Westbrook Library,
Westbrook Library,
which
so-
is so wonderful.
So please check out Richard's poems and
Check out Richard. And he has a epigrammatic streak, too. Here's a 3-line poem. Bathroom break at the multiplex, 2007. So as you say, up until 2009, mortality, you know, like the wind, I always hear the wind at my back. It's on his mind. The halls thud and roar. Our best nightmares thrash their tails. Wake up, America! That's Richard, too.
Well, he was also a member of the Guilford Peace Guild,
Yes,
and he was always out there on Saturday morning on the corner of the green, the
that's
south corner
where
of
I
the green.
remember him as
Yeah.
well. Oh my goodness, it's all coming back.
Yeah.
So, as we said at the beginning of the show, our parents pass on, but we're here. And then our loved ones, like Richard, pass on, and yet he's here in his words and in his signature in an errant book, in a bookshop, and it's marvelous. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're
That
welcome.
brought him back. On the theme of elegiac longings, which Richard Corso has a book by that title, and I couldn't get it. So another college chum, Gil Cass, in New York City, got it from his son and sent it to me. And that'll be a wonderful theme for another show. We'll go back to Corso someday.
So
He
I
wrote
would
that
like to.
lion poem that
Yeah,
you gave
yeah,
me.
yeah.
What a guy. So let's play a little Russian music in our minds
Okay.
and do a little Cossack dance, you know, and imagine that, oh my, it's 1996 and Joseph Brodsky's on his deathbed. He's been writing in English. The Soviet Union kicked him out in '72. We talked about him, social parasite, boom, out of the Union. And America took him in, Nobel Prize in 1987, lived in New York City for a while. And toward the end, he knew he had cardio issues, and toward his end, He is very mindful of mortality and has a poem just like that one, Ode to Concrete. You'll outlast me, good old concrete, as I've outlasted, it seems, some men who had taken me, too, for a kind of street, citing color of eyes or mien. So I praise your inanimate, porous looks, not out of envy, but as the next of kin, less durable, meaning the poet, plagued with loose joints, though still grateful to the architects. I applaud your humble, to be exact, meaningless origins, roar and screech, fully matched, however, by the abstract destination beyond my reach. It's not that nothing begets its kind, but that the future prefers to court a date that's resolutely blind and wrapped in a petrified long skirt.
What? I was right up there till the last line, and now I don't get it.
Me too. I was trying to figure out
What,
the long skirt. Except he refers to, the highway.
Oh, okay.
He's addressing good old concrete.
Oh, okay.
You'll outlast me, damn it. As I've outlasted, it seems, some men who had taken me too for a kind of street. They walked all over me.
Oh, okay.
Citing color of eyes or mean, he had gray eyes,
All right.
gray hair.
So the last metaphor of the skirt is the long skirt would be the highway again?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
But up to then,
Yeah.
it's so great.
It is.
The
He
po-
uses a lot of imagery with structural things. Was there anybody in his background with building or?
Great question, but he's got that kind of mind
Okay.
that comes through in all that imagery.
Right.
Architectural almost.
Yes, architecture. That's the word I was looking
Almost.
for.
But not, but there's humor here.
Yeah.
Ironic humor, right? I applaud your humble, to be exact, meaningless origins. What is concrete? And it takes the form of whatever you put it in. Then there's at the city dump in Nantucket. This one's even more dense. No pun intended, dense concrete. Sorry. Look at him. He does look grayish. He's got gray eyes. Oh my. This is his last collection called So Forth. Who would name a collection So Forth? And so forth? In other words, all this has gone on and is passing and so forth after me. And
Somebody with a sense of humor, as you just.
someone with a deep ironic sense of humor. And there are seagulls at the dump in Nantucket. Who would put that on your cover?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe Richard?
I don't know. It reminds me of Jamie Wyeth has a beautiful, huge painting
yeah.
of the seagulls at the dump and the. Do you know that painting?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, Wyeth. Gosh,
Jamie, yeah, the younger son.
the younger one,
Yeah.
son. So that's what he's got on the cover. And here's the signature poem from the book. I'm going to read it more slowly because
Please.
it's so. At the city dump in Nantucket, to Stephen White. Gosh, I wish I knew what that image of petrified long skirt was. I'll be thinking about that one. At the city dump in Nantucket, the perishable devours the perishable in broad daylight, moribund in its turn in late November. The seagulls thrashing the dump are trying to outnumber the snow, or have it at least delayed. Excuse me. Could you do the last three stanzas?
Sure. The reckless primordial alphabet savaging every which way the oxygen wall, constitutes a preface to the anarchy of the refuse. In the beginning, there was a screech. In their stammering W's, one reads not hunger, but the prurience of comma-sharp talons toward what outlasts them, or else a torn-out page's flight from the volume's fat, while some mad anemometer, wow, giddily spins its cups like a haywire tea ceremony, and the Atlantic is breasting grimly with its athletic swells the darkening overcast. Ooh.
Thank you. You saved it.
I don't know. I don't think you could. I don't think this one could have been conquered any other way.
I had a muskrat in my throat for a minute. Isn't that so cool when you think of in the dump, the seagulls are trying to stay alive, and yet their comma-sharp talents, isn't that great? Because this metaphor, the controlling metaphor of this is a book or a page that is also rotting and decomposing. And there's a free page that flew out with the words flying.
And the way he comes back to the shapes of language, like W's and commas.
Yes.
You know, so you can picture it.
And the sound.
Makes you picture
It makes you picture
right.
Visually.
Yes.
The language decomposing.
Right.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it is so cool. So here's a question. You sent me on this wild goose chase because of another word that I didn't know in another poem. And he had made a portmanteau of it. We'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But what I found out from my long excursion was that he translated himself.
Yes.
From Russian to English. And of course, in the translation, he kept the meaning, but the words were often quite different.
And lost their musicality. Even though he translated his own, he said, as an aside, this English, it just doesn't sing the way Russian sings. And of course, that also brings up the point of, wow, if you're in your native language, which comes in through mother's milk, and everything about you, including your cellular level and pores, celebrates in that language, even Akhmatova would agree, that it can't be done. You can't quite do, and yet
in this poem, it seems as though it was made in English because it
was.
Oh, well, it was. Okay.
Isn't that the most beautiful thing about Joseph Brodsky? He says, wait a minute, I'm American. I've got this language, which is so much richer in other ways. I'm fully in command of it now because I could speak some English back in the 70s. I've lived here 23 years. I'm really good at English.
Right.
The last 5 years, he's in English.
Okay, so that was my other question.
Yes.
Does he? Okay. You answered the question.
And those are the ones I'm reading in such an enthralled way because he took full command of English as a poet who's so Nobel quality. Bingo. What a great place for a 3-minute break.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, that's fun.
Amen. Isn't poetry like that? So much fun to share. Our conversations just are so
I love it when questions lead to answers, but more questions.
And crazy words.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of crazy ones in there.
Oh, there are.
So we'll take a 3-minute break.
Okay.
Do a little rap and have a lot more fun.
Sounds good to me.
Yep. Thanks.
You don't have to be so strong.
Strength is not optional. This is my mother, my purpose.
Real muscle is lifting her spirits between bedpans and bad news from doctors that doubt her strength. Strength is buried in bills, managing meds, and swallowing those moments of, Mom, it's me, your daughter. Remember? My strength is super, but I'm still human, right?
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.
With newspapers and media outlets merging all over the country, communities are losing their local voice.
There's so much going on in the community that I think doesn't really, there's a lot of folks who are unaware of it. And I think things like this can bring it out into the community and in that way kind of bring the community together.
Information and to our residents is the key to good governance. And with the national media and local media not often covering us, this is an excellent opportunity for us constantly to communicate with our constituents and also to have them communicate with us.
The best outcomes will be achieved through a community-based organization that grows its operation and scale by means of locally produced programming.
All of our content is volunteer produced, so we do shows from talk shows to music shows, working with high schools.
VSC-TV is committed to ensuring that the investment made to secure these powerful tools will pay great dividends in the community for many, many years.
Hello.
Hi, I'm from Blue Hill Stone Barns. We brought a meal for you and I'm here to serve it to you.
Okay, great. Come in.
Zucchini carbonara, made from zucchini that was harvested earlier this morning.
Again?
Hey, Dan Barber.
You have room for a little bit more?
Come on in.
Brochettes, the sausage. So when we made that zucchini carbonara, you know, they're the end pieces of the zucchini and then the cores that we cut away, not to mention zucchini flour. Usually those get thrown out. We use them to create an entire second dish. Does that,
Again?
I'm here to bring you your third course. It's the vines from your zucchini.
We'll have a little zucchini stem pasta, a different experience of zucchini. When we start to think differently about our food, we can get a lot more out of it.
This is delicious.
What do you think we can make out of this? 40% of food in America is never eaten. Cook it, store it, share it. Visit SaveTheFood.com.
It's a beautiful day out here. Sunny today with light breezes, giving way to clouds in the afternoon. We could see some light precipitation to moderate precipitation later on, followed by powerful storm-like conditions. 90 miles per hour winds are expected. Authorities are asking everyone, stay indoors. Come on, that's it. Let's go.
Zhivago, of course. We'll get to him, but not quite yet. We're on time and the passing of time and Brodsky's consciousness about the end of life approaching, and that brings me back to Richard Tejan and the consciousness of mortality and the end of life. He's got several wonderful poems in different voices. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that echoed for me when you said he was, not negatively, chameleon-like. I don't mean that negatively. In a way with people who needed something and he was willing to give it in terms of their expectations of him. I love that, which kind of goes in parallel with the different voices I hear in his poetry, like the three-line dramatic, a solid speaking voice. And then, as you just mentioned, the more, dare we say, frolicsome at the end?
He could be, yeah, he could
really?
be frolicsome. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, Independence Day, 1959. But this says Guilford at 2006. So he's reflecting back, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Independence Day, 1959. Do you remember where you were that year?
Well, I was 8 years old, so.
Cool. Like granddaughter right now. Yeah. Time is a lie. It happens when we sleep. Our family entitled me to write like this. They were always mending things and making what they wouldn't buy. Partly thrift, but more, it's our natural right to use the materials at hand. The story was Aunt Peggy drilled branches into the Christmas tree, muttering, "Who says only God can make a tree?" They put us kids in the parade in turbans, top hats, costumes from the attic, wrapped my uncle in a sheet with torch and crown, and called us huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Nearly 50 years have happened. Now costumes come from Walmart. The country sleepwalks into war again. How prescient. He was aware in 59, or maybe in 2006, looking back.
Yeah.
And maybe was he around 8 years old then? Wonder
Oh,
what
he was 7 years old. He was, yeah.
Wow. Summary, 2006, Guilford, 2006. Nice to see the bookends there. We survived mosquito bites, jellyfish, bad movies, 2 weeks of nighttime heat, and distant death in Lebanon. Now dog day cicadas shrill like wires between the trees. Clear skies and dry air foretell autumn days when apples buzz in dry grass with dizzy bees. Me, I worried for 3 months about the next steps in my medical odyssey. They know more about the rings of Saturn than what goes on within my earthly body. So already, 2006, summary, he's thinking of a wrap-up, but also with the imagery of, wow, jellyfish, bad movies, being a primary school kid.
He never stopped
Richard Park.
observing and enjoying the world.
Oh,
he loved to hike. He loved the beach.
Hiking for sure.
And he was also a member of the trails. I forget what that's called.
The Shoreline Trails crew?
Yeah.
Developing the plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, there's a bench. There's a bench in his honor near the along the Stony Creek. Yeah.
Wow. So he was that civic-minded too, which is really a nice rounder picture of him. Oh, what else did you love about Richard?
This was a funny poem. So he was always in his writing and workshopping, developing his theory of poetry.
Yes.
And so he, at one point he said, okay, the heck with the rules.
Yes.
These are the rules.
Yes, I know that one.
The first rule of poetry. The first rule is don't mention the words ear and Van Gogh in the same stanza. The first rule, in fact, is don't mention Van Gogh. The first rule is forget your old neighborhood on 13th Street. The first rule is show, don't tell. The first rule, even telling is a kind of showing. The first rule is to eschew utterly egregious adjectives. The first rule is don't write about the news. The first rule is explain nothing in the beginning. The first rule is to begin in the middle, is to end in the beginning, is to begin at the end. The first rule, form emerges from repetition. The first rule, meaning emerges from variation. The first rule, poetry is repetition with variation, which of course this poem continues to be. The first rule, if it can be paraphrased, it's not a poem. The first rule, each poem is an experiment. The first rule, if you don't fail, you're not trying. The first rule of poetry is don't mention Van Gogh.
Again, the third time mentioned. Yeah, he is so can I use the word iconoclastic?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's not really fully bohemian rebellious, but, I mean, he's too civic-minded for that.
Right.
But he's got that edge where he challenges, well, wait a minute, maybe I gotta correct myself, because boy, is he anti-war in so many places here. Do you have another one?
Oh gosh, let's see. Let's see what else I like. Another Race to the Swift. Actor Kevin Costner has a devilish lip beard, also known as soul patch. New movie, young wife, new baby, and a mansion on the beach. At 52, the article says, Kevin is, quote, easy in his skin, unquote, end quote. The smug jerk. I've got cancer, or it has me, and now my hairless skin itches all over, up and down. Sometimes I have to grab the slotted spoon off the rack and scrape the itch away.
Wow.
I don't know Kevin, of course, but I feel as if I do. He reminds me of Billy, who took me to the Greenwich pool on a break from our cabinetry job. I hesitated at the "cut-offs not allowed" sign, while Billy jumped right in. The lifeguard threw us both out, but Billy got cool and I didn't. He thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was the story of my life.
Oh, what a rap that sentence is.
Yeah, he's very...
For him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's so Richard.
And I don't... The thing I remember is I remember him telling me, you know, I saw this stupid Kevin Costner on a stupid TV, and the next thing you know, here's this poem that generated from it.
Yeah, with the little hair under the lip.
He hated the phrase "comfortable in his own skin."
Yeah.
You know, he really hated it.
And that brings me to a kind of coda. I mean, of all the people I've known, and in his words and writing, he seems to be able to look death straight in the eye. Mm-hmm. That's a rare quality, I think, in people, to sort of turn at bay and stare down death with words that become immortal. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that welcome. Retrospective.
Well, thank you for inviting it.
Oh my, that was so filling.
It was.
It was. And back to Joseph Brodsky, who says, I'm looking death in the face too. And here's what I think. After us. So now this is again from So Forth, with the seagulls at Nantucket in the dump, screeching for a living. After us it will certainly be not the flood and not drought either. In all likelihood, the climate in the kingdom of justice with its 4 seasons will be temperate, so that a choleric or a melancholic, a sanguinic, and a phlegmatic could rule by turns, 3 months each. From the standpoint of an encyclopedia, that's plenty. Although, no doubt, caprices of atmospheric pressure or those of temperature might confuse a reformer. Still, the god of commerce only revels in a rising demand for tweeds, English umbrellas, worsted topcoats. His most dreaded enemies are darned stockings and patched up trousers. It would seem that the rain outside the window advocates precisely this distinctly frugal approach to the landscape, more generally to all creation. But the Constitution doesn't mention rain. There's not a single reference in the Constitution to barometers, or for that matter, to anyone who, perched on a stool, holding a ball of yarn like some muscular Alcibiades, passes the night poring over a fashion magazine's dog-eared pages in the anteroom of the Golden Age. What? He's got Roman Empire in several poems as an architectural feature for his poems. He's back to the Roman emperors a lot. This was written in 1994 in his full command of tongue twisters, and he's having fun with them. Is this even a word, sanguinic? Well,
see, I believe in the loose making of verbs into nouns
that's cool.
and adjectives into adverbs and all kinds of things.
Because the meaning is clear.
Sure, why not?
You know, because there's phlegmatic, okay, melancholic, we know that, but sanguinic. I could look that up.
Yeah, I get a lot of spell check telling me not to do that kind of thing. I ignore it.
Well, isn't that a wonderful capacity to play with words anyway, like in the sandbox? We're down to 4 minutes for this section, but we're going to have some more fun. There's going to be a part 2 for Russia. And we've got to bring back our dear friend Anna Akhmatova, who was the closest friend with Pasternak.
Oh.
Imagine those buddies.
You want me to do that now in the 4 minutes? Or afterward?
Afterward, I think I'd like to pick at random, or my napkin placing for Brodsky. Are you a coffee shop reader and writer?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, reader, I don't know.
Yeah. There's nothing better. And then what's at hand to mark the page?
Right.
Elegy is a good way to wrap it up. Joseph Brodsky, again, the capacity to look mortality in the eye and make pronouncements. Whether you fished me bravely out of the Pacific, or I pried your shell wide open by the Atlantic, now matters little. A different kind of ocean erodes nowadays what seemed fairly rocky and presumably insinuates itself into your hairdo as well, obliterating as much as conquering. And, as the poet said, thou art far in humanity, what with your offspring now breaking new hearts and balls across the continent, which is what, I hope, we still have in common. Still, they are only half you. In a court of law, the inheritance of your mesmerizing beauty, that I thought immortal, will be awarded to nobody, including yourself. For although the gods, or genes, are generous, lending their properties, say for a trial run in these precincts, ultimately they are selfish. At any rate, they are more vain than you, having eternity, which is a far cry from yet another rented abode in a snowbound village somewhere up north, where perhaps at this very moment you stare at your flimsy mirror, returning you surely less than my equally one-dimensional memory, though to you this makes indeed no difference. The elegy for a love affair that has its inevitable run and end, which is like life. What a deep lover he was. What a satisfying show, Gemma. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I think
Fred.
the emotional depths of the poets kind of reach out and grab us and catch us, and then we can kind of share their feelings that way through the language. What a delight. So, this is November 29th. We're going to have a show on December 27th. And that December 27th show is, again, a full celebration of the holidays, Christmas, Kwanzaa, all kinds of holidays. And we'll have the Howling Hounds the 4 musicians.
Can't wait to watch that.
And
Very fun.
preview of coming attractions. You think we can arrange a Japanese haiku show in April?
She's hoping for April.
Oh,
It's on.
it's on.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thanks.
Yeah. My
And,
sister Marita Gargiulo.
Marita Gargiulo,
Right.
good friend
Yeah.
and poet. And the 3 of us will be here, or maybe a 4th too.
Yeah. Hopefully she'll get another haiku
Oh, great.
aficionado enthusiast.
4 voices. Yeah. Well, this is finally a wrap. I think I've enjoyed this show more than any other one I've done.
This has been great. And I will come. I will come and do the. I just need,
Yeah, I do too.
Okay.
Thanks. It's a wrap. Thank you for joining us, Poetry of Immigrants. And stay with us each month. We're having a good time. Thanks, Gemma.
You're welcome. Thank you, Frank.